How's it going, everyone? There has been some news about Grok 4 performing better than PhDs in their own field. Grok 4 being the latest version of the Grok AI software produced by Elon Musk's xAI. And this has led to a whole discussion about whether Grok 4 or AI could replace PhDs. And the short answer is no, it cannot replace PhDs, and we will get into why. For example, there's been some exaggerations, like take this comment here. Elon Musk says Grok 4 is better than all PhDs in every subject, no exceptions. Well, Musk responded to this saying, at least with regards to academic tests, Grok 4 is better than almost all PhDs in all fields. Musk actually gives some more detail about this. He says Grok 4 is at the point where it essentially never gets math, physics questions, exam questions wrong unless they are skillfully adversarial. Skillfully adversarial means the questions are specifically written in a way to trick AI, and there certainly are ways to write math and physics questions like that. He goes on, it can identify errors or ambiguities in questions, then fix the error in the question or answer each variant of an ambiguous question. Okay, well, that's great and very impressive. Here's why it won't replace PhDs. The purpose of a PhD is not to train someone to be good at answering test questions. It's to train someone to make original and sufficiently valuable contributions to their field. That's a very different skill set. In fact, if you have a bachelor's degree, you can get a PhD without writing a single test. See, tests are essentially trivia. And in the case of math or physics tests, you could say it's a more advanced form of trivia where you might not know the answer right away, but you have to know which equations to use to get the answer and how to use those equations. Once you know that, it's just a straightforward derivation process. See, when you're writing a test, you're answering questions that already have an answer. That's how someone can check if your answer is correct. But the purpose of a PhD is to get someone to make an original contribution, to do work that no one has ever done before, whether it's an experiment or designing something or coming up with a theory, something original that is valuable. So to say that with regards to academic tests, Grok 4 is better than almost all PhDs in all fields, it's kind of like saying with regards to literature trivia, Grok 4 is better than almost all authors in all fields. That's probably true. I would hope it's true for most AI. But being good at literature trivia doesn't mean that you're good at making up original stories that will be valuable to your audience. Let's say you're doing a bachelor's degree. Well, for that, you do have to write a bunch of exams for which you do have to know a bunch of facts. And if it's math or physics, those facts include equations and how to use those equations and what situations and where those equations come from and so on. Once you know those facts, great, you're useful in some way because you're someone who knows how to do certain things and someone who knows certain information. But then the next question is, but can you now make a contribution to that field? Can you now expand what exists within the realm of human knowledge and human capability? And the purpose of a PhD is to train someone to do that and demonstrate their ability to do that. Now, Musk even mentioned that Grok 4 cannot do that, although he does hypothesize that eventually it will be able to. See, here we have him say, Grok 4 is the first time in my experience that an AI has been able to solve difficult real-world engineering questions where the answers cannot be found anywhere on the internet or in books, and it will get better. Okay, so the question is, if the answers are not in the internet or in books, then how do you know that the answers are correct? There must be some group of experts that would conclude if the answers are correct. But we're still talking about questions to which one knows the answer. One can check if the answer is correct or not. But then he quotes here, I think it may discover new technologies as soon as later this year, and I would be shocked if it has not done so next year. I would expect Grok to, literally discover new technologies that are actually useful no later than next year, and maybe end of this year, and it might discover new physics next year, and within 2 years, so new physics, what does that mean? Probably some new physics theories or corollaries, applications, that sort of thing. I'd say almost certainly, so like just let that sink in. Now, that is something that a PhD could do. That is an original contribution, developing a new technology, a new theory, a new application of an existing theory, that sort of thing. But see, that's still not replacing PhDs because, okay, an idea for a new technology has been generated. A new theory has been proposed, but it still has to be built. Right? You have to come up with a design that'll be functional and build it and test it for the hypothesis or theory that's proposed. You have to come up with an experimental design, run the experiment, analyze the data, make conclusions from the data. That is also all original work, right? You're not just repeating someone else's experiment. You're designing an experiment for a theory that's never been tested. You're building a technology that's never been built before. That's still original work. And so the role of a PhD will still exist. Now, this statement in particular has some interesting details. For example, if Grok 4 is performing better than almost all PhDs in academic tests, well, how much time do the PhDs have to write these tests? What materials do the PhDs have available to them to write these tests? A fair comparison, considering the speed of computation, would really have to let these PhDs use practically unlimited time and all of the literature available to them to answer these test questions. And that might turn into not a very practical comparison if you're giving them practically infinite time. But there is a much more interesting detail here. See, if the purpose of a PhD is to make an original, valuable contribution to your field, the question is, well, do PhDs actually do that? And the answer is maybe not. Okay, maybe some PhDs are more valuable than others or more impressive than others. Some PhDs might be just rewording existing theories in a different way, or just helping a professor complete research that the professor is working on anyways. And what's interesting in this statement is that Grok 4 says, or Elon Musk says, Grok 4 is better than almost all PhDs in all fields. Almost all. So what is this small subset of PhDs that actually perform better than Grok 4 in whatever kind of comparison it is? And is there sufficient overlap between those small portion of PhDs that outperform Grok 4 and those small portion of PhDs that offer exceptionally original and exceptionally valuable contributions to their field? That would be interesting to look into. So I hope you enjoyed that, and until next time.